why Uganda has no refugees living outside Uganda. Even when we had corn and ADF terrorism, we had internally displaced persons within Uganda, within the country. They never ran outside Uganda. Since the time of the NRM, we have never had refugees from Uganda to other countries, because they have nothing to run away from. Even when there was corn and so on, everybody knew that it was not the government, it was others who were disturbing it. They would have what we call IDP, internally displaced. But they would never go outside the country. So that ideology of the NRM of unity is number one. Number two, a strong army that has ensured peace within Uganda, all the challenges notwithstanding. Number three, a strong private sector encouraged by the correct pro-private sector policies of the NRM. Most of the surpluses referred to above have been generated by the private sector, farmers, manufacturers, etc. Number four, the correct Pan-African ideology of the NRM that saw the revival of the East African community, the creation of COMESA, and the Abuja Treaty of 1991 that eventually saw the birth of the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area. Today, Uganda exports goods and services worth 1.2 billion to East African community, 1.6 billion to COMESA, and 2 billion to the rest of Africa. Algeria has a market of yesterday 1.2 billion for dairy products that only awaits us to solve the problem of FMD, EJOA, and CBPP, Chihaha. Ethiopia has a dairy products market of $30 million that only awaits a reliable road from Karbon Kotido to the southern Ethiopia. Number five, the correct NRM policy of emphasizing science in education and prioritizing the better payment of government scientists if we do not yet have enough money to pay everybody. Africa was colonized and enslaved, and people were exterminated, dominated, or marginalized, not because they lacked storytellers, comedians, musicians, witch doctors and priests, kings and queens, soldiers, farmers, etc., but because they lagged behind in science and technology. That's why we were colonized. We were colonized not because we lacked all these fellows, musicians, storytellers, all those were there. Clowns to make kings laugh. They were all there, but we were colonized because we lagged behind in science and technology. Inability to see this is a threat to our survival as free people, if not survive at all. Our lagging behind in the science and technology of gunpowder and guns, for instance, was one of the greatest handicaps. The private sector needs scientists in addition to managerial cadreship. The state, economic and social infrastructures need scientists, such as researchers, engineers for electricity, engineers for water, engineers for electronics, doctors, vets, etc. So, unity by ideology, the soldiers guarding the peace, the private sector building the economy, the scientists to support this, both the private sector, but also the government infrastructure. Number 6, the correct strategy of the NRM, developing the infrastructure, the roads, the railway, the electricity, the piped water, the telephones, the internet, etc. The crucial roles of infrastructure are to enable, e.g. electricity, and connect, e.g. roads, the producers of goods and services and their consumers, and do so cheaply, so that the product is not overpriced and therefore being competitive in the market. We could have achieved much more if it was not for either the confused people or the enemies of Africa, many of them obstructing us, many times obstructing us. I, for instance, remember the sabotage of Uganda Temple of Development by the 6th Parliament of 1999 on the 8th of November, when they blocked the agreement I had negotiated with the AES, American Energy Service, to produce power at 4.9 American cents at Bujagari. And Mr. Chat Chai of Mali Sampran Public Company of Thailand, who was chased by Parliament, whom I had mobilized with the late Mzee Mrwana to help us with the milk processing. Dr. Mranga's banana project has been maliciously obstructed many times. Recently, we witnessed the mishandling of the Coffee Valley addition effort here in the Parliament. Uganda has made these gigantic steps, such obstructions notwithstanding. When it comes to the recent high commodity prices, caused initially by the relaunch of the world economy after the 2 years of lockdown, and additionally by the war in Ukraine, our decision, after careful analysis, is to avoid the traps of tax cuts and subsidies. Instead, we are doing two things. One is to engage the global actors that have caused these artificial shortages. I have contacted some of the actors. I'm in touch with all these wonderful people. I'm glad H.E. Biden is going to Saudi Arabia to meet the Crown Prince to get OPEC to pump more petroleum out of the ground. That would definitely help. Also, the chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency Macky Sall, met His Excellency Putin in Sochi, Russia, to ask him to assist in getting the wheat of Ukraine out of the ports of Odessa. And he has also talked to the Europeans to stop sanctioning wheat from Russia and fertilizers because Africa needs them. This is one of the correct ways. We shall use diplomacy to solve this problem created by these wonderful people who fight instead of talking. The other one is to get our own substitutes, like you saw here in the palm oil. Very soon Uganda will be the biggest producer of palm oil in the world. And would have done it long ago if it was not so, again, for the obstruction in Sango Bay and in Karanga, in Buvuma. There was the young member of parliament there, Egunyu. Oh, wasting a lot of time. Cassava and banana flour for bread, and our own sunflower, soya beans oil, as we wait for our more quantities of palm oil from Sango Bay, Mayuge, Buvuma, Maruzi, Bundubujo, etc. Cutting taxes or subsidies, especially on imports, is suicidal, because our people may buy carelessly and we end up draining our foreign exchange reserves. Moreover, cutting taxes or subsidizing means taking money away from the planned projects and putting it in consumption. Consumption of fuel, bread, etc. That means we stop, for instance, the following roads: Kigumba, Bulima, Kaboya, Chenjojo, 235 kilometers. Those are ongoing. Rukunjiri, Shihi, Shashakanu, Masindi, Para, Hoima, Butiaba, Waseko. Those are already ongoing, but there are new ones. Buhimba, Narwe, Bulamaji, Uganda, Kakumiro, Masindi, Biso, Hohanya, Irongo, Charushesha, Butore, Kabari, Kizeramfumbi, Kapchoro, Swam, Atiaka, Ropi, Busega, Mpige Expressway, Muyembe na Kapiripirit, Najana Nkumbi, Busabara, Kira, Matuga, Ruenkunyu, Apach, Lira, Puranga, Moroto, Loktanyara, rehabilitation of Mtiana Mbende Road, Arui, Nebi, and so many of those will stop these roads so that money is put in subsidizing fuel and subsidizing bread. These roads, these projects help these areas. If you go, for instance, now the other day I was in Katakwi, in Oririm, I was passing out soldiers. The area has changed completely because of that tarmac road. Or stopping the secondary schools, such as Nobo Mayombo Seed Secondary School in Kawarore, Awara Seed Secondary School in Arua, Nairambe Seed Secondary School in Buvuma, or universities like Soroti, Moon University, or cutting some money from PDM or Emyoga, meaning money taken away from production to consumption on account of a temporary problem. Let us maintain our momentum of development. The high commodity prices will be solved in other ways, some of them outlined above. In foreign affairs, Uganda abstained in the votes in the UN on the issue of Ukraine. You must have heard the arguments of the two sides. We have communicated our views confidentially to the two sides, the Western Bloc and Russia. At some stage, we shall give our views publicly. Our views are very correct, but we are giving them quietly. On the issue of security within the regional conferences like the one we had in Nairobi some weeks ago, on the issue of security within the region, in the regional conferences, like the one we had in Nairobi some weeks ago, we share our history with the African brothers and sisters. Some of the problems never get solved on account of mixing up three issues: armed conflicts for just causes, armed conflicts for reactionary aims, and the use of terrorist methods, whatever the nature of the conflict, just or unjust. The tendency, which is not correct, is to bunch all conflicting parties as negative forces. Uganda is a good laboratory for all manner of conflicts. We have the just wars like the ones waged between 1971 and 1986 by the different fighting groups. against the regimes of Amin, Obote II, and Okero. Why just? Why do we call them just wars? It is because the fight was about the freedom of vote by secret ballot for all adults above the age of 18 at regular intervals. The struggle against extrajudicial killings, the struggle against sectarianism that was enforced by arms, etc. The last elections had been in April 1962, and we never had any other elections until the 10th of December 1980, after 18 years. Even those elections were contested from the beginning of the process to the end. We tried to talk to the groups that thought they had the upper hand, to no avail. And once still, they would kill anybody with a different opinion. Ben Kiwanuka, Basilio Bataringaya, Alexander Latim, Oriema, Kasura, Sebugwao, Rutamaguzi, Nkanjwa, etc. People are being killed. We therefore had no alternative but to fight. That is why, between 1966 and 1986, Uganda was among the top 4 refugees generating countries in the world at that time. At one time, Uganda had 500,000 refugees, almost the whole population of West Nile, in exile in Congo and South Sudan. While I do not want to talk about other African countries, I am sure that I can safely cite at least 2 examples. The struggle by the SPLM of the Sudan against the Arab Islamic chauvinist regime of Khartoum, which was insisting that the very dark Dinkas, Shiruks, Nuer, etc. of South Sudan were Arabs and had to live under Sharia law. If you have got a sample of a South Sudanese and he stands up and you see him, and you call him an Arab, you must be out of your mind. How do you resolve that madness? These were mad. You know, we would spend years talking to Bashir, but these people are not Arabs. Why do you call Sudan an Arab country? And why do you want to make Sudan Islamic? These are not Muslims. They are not even, none of them are not even Christian. They are our traditional religion. Why do you bother them? But madness is quite democratic in the world. How do you resolve that madness? How about the whites in South Africa, who said that the indigenous Africans could not have voting rights in the country of their ancestry? You imagine we had to spend years with the whites in South Africa. The answer was a just war in each of the above situations. You then have unjust wars of either aggression or of a reactionary nature, non-progressive. Take the colonial wars of conquest. Why were the colonialists conquering other countries? What right did they have to do so? Then you come to ADF, Kony, Lakwena, etc. ADF said that they wanted to make Uganda Islamic by force. Kony wanted to rule us by some commandments that were to be given him by the Holy Spirit. Lakwena wanted government Megwa. In Acholi, that means our government, by which she meant the Acholi tribal government over the whole of Uganda. These were aims, all right, but they were wrong aims, oppressive aims, negative and progressive aims. They were therefore reactionary, kupinga maendeleo aims, and hence the war fought in their implementation were unjust wars, just like the wars of the colonial conquest. Having talked about just and unjust wars, we also clarified the issue of terrorism. It is wrong to say that every armed group is a terrorist group, whether they are fighting a just or unjust war. Take Rapana, for instance. Although she was fighting an unjust war overthrowing sectarianism, she was definitely not a terrorist because she was not using terrorist methods. Terrorist methods mean using violence indiscriminately, such as attacking non-combatants, killing prisoners of war, or torturing them. Lakona was confused, using the witchcraft of the smearing her fighters with the oil of moya tree, shea butter tree, and telling them that they were immune to bullets, but she was not a terrorist because she was not targeting non-combatants, she was not killing prisoners of war. That is how Major Jensi survived, one of our army officers. When Jensi was captured, Rakwena said, no, you bring him here. I will make him a member of the Holy Spirit movement, of the Rakwena movement. Then Jensi was put there and he was smeared with the moya, oil that he had not got. Then the man took the first chance to escape again. So definitely Rakwena was not a terrorist. She was confused, but not a terrorist. And ADF were, on the other hand, fighting both an unjust war, but also a terrorist one. Why? It is because they were targeting non-combatants, killing prisoners of war, etc., the Atiak massacre, the Baronyo massacre, the Kichwamba burning of 8 students in the dormitory, the Kiburawa Seminary massacre, the abductions of young people to force them to fight for them, the abduction of sex slaves. It is those acts that make a fighter a terrorist. Even if you are fighting for a just cause, if you target non-combatants, use forced recruitment other than conscription by the state, kill prisoners of war, take sex slaves, you become a terrorist. Therefore, in the whole of the Great Lakes area, the concerned groups should be audited as to whether they are fighting for a just cause or not, and as to whether they are using terrorist methods or not. What is then the correct method of resolving such armed conflicts? What is our experience? Our experience and even other good experiences show that combining both political and military methods is the correct way, especially for the non-terrorist armed groups, even when they are fighting for an unjust cause, e.g. sectarianism. Priority should be given to dialogue leading to a political solution. Even for the terrorist groups, if they accept dialogue, it should be tried. It is through dialogue, combined with military efforts, that we reach solutions with Angelo Okero, Bamuze, Musa Echeru. Musa Echeru is here. Where is Musa Echeru? That man was a rebel. BNZ, UFM, FEDEM, etc. Using force is like using surgery in medicine. Surgery is used as a method of last resort when less violent methods to the body can no longer work. Even then, it should be used in a very restricted way, affecting only the sick part, not the rest of the body. East Africa, under our chairman, H.E. Kenyatta, can resolve all these security challenges using appropriate actions, political methods where feasible, and force where necessary. Uganda is ready and able to contribute to all these efforts. Congo and Uganda, since November 30th, 2021, crushed the ADF in Eastern Congo. ADF cannot operate in large groups anymore in the three sectors of Sector 2, Ituri, Sector 1 and 2, North Kivu. I think one is Sector 3, Sector 2, Ituri, Sector 1 and 3 in North Kivu. The ADF survivors have either gone into hiding or have fled beyond what we call the limit of exploitation, the boundary where the Congo Army allowed us to reach. However, in smaller groups, I'm told the ADF is still sneaking back in some of the sectors and killing some unguarded villagers. There is a solution to such a problem that we used to deal with those smaller groups attacking the soft targets of unguarded wananchi. We are discussing all this with the government of Congo. Within Uganda, we have strengthened the security on the whole, including Karamoja and the surrounding districts. We have trained tens of thousands of LDUs that I passed out at Kaweta, Labordon, Olodim, etc. recently, and many of them have been absorbed into the divisions to boost manpower. As I've said repeatedly, the cattle rustlers will soon lose appetite for the gun. However, the cattle rustlers and other terrorists should be condemned, and they should also condemn themselves because of Okwetera and Bekube and Owo. We football players, sometimes you can hurt yourself, you can kick your own shin, and it's very painful. And it is called Okwetera and Owo. I think in Uganda they call it Okwekube and Owo. Hurting one's shin as you play football. In 1991, we reduced the manpower of the army from 100,000 to 40,000 to save money by having less infantry so that we can buy better equipment on account of the situation in the region at that time that had the potential for possible interstate conflicts. You could not fight such conflicts with just infantry, soldiers just walking on foot. Even counterinsurgency needed some capacity of combined arms. That is how we were able to build the strategic elements of our defense forces, such as Air Force, artillery, tanks, reconnaissance, etc. That is how we were able to achieve victories and cope with the dangerous security situations in the region. Having smaller numbers of personnel and more equipment was a smart way of building a modern army able to defend the borders of the country against external serious threats. The modern equipment alone, however, will not handle indisciplined elements walking on foot, stealing cattle, killing people, raping women, etc. On account of activities of those confused people, we are now forced to build up the manpower of the armed forces again, far above the figure of 1991. That means a bigger wage bill, feeding, health, education for the children of the soldiers, accommodation, etc. This is the money we should be spending in Karamoja and other areas, on the roads, the schools, the health centers, the partial development model, the Myoga. Indeed, the Karamojong have seen the tarmac road from Soroti to Moroto, from Moroto to Nakapiripirit, the electricity from Opuyo to Moroto, from Moroto to Kotido, Kabonga, Bin. They have seen the schools. They have seen the health centers. It is government money that has been doing all that. Nevertheless, we are now diverted by our indisciplined cattle rustlers to spend money on more soldiers, infantry, to fight what war and against whom? To fight a war of ignorance and fight against our expanded prosperity. All understanding people should denounce this sabotage. You, the leaders, really should talk to our people that they are undermining themselves. Because the money we are spending on soldiers, what? This is money which they should be using to solve their problems. With what I have said above, Uganda is on the right path and has been for the last 36 years. We only need to be mindful of 3 points: the environment, corruption, and chauvinism in business. You have seen what can happen to countries when they cannot produce their own food. There is no problem Uganda cannot solve, as I have said above, as long as we are able to produce most or all of our food. To do this, you need soil and, above all, fresh water. This means environmental protection, protecting the wetlands, all of them, the riverbanks, the lake shores, and the forests, and also planting trees, even in inhabited areas. I have warned all sub-county and Miluka chiefs, as well as cows, not to forget the environmental officers, the GSOs and the DSOs, manning areas where I will discover encroachment on wetlands will be sacked, and if legally possible, also criminally prosecuted. This is for all areas of Uganda, except some areas of Busoga, Bukedi, and Kigezi, where historically there was misguided government encouragement of people going into wetlands to grow swamp rice and start dairy farms. Those areas of historical mistakes will also be recovered by working with the stakeholders to shift to fish farming in the periphery of those wetlands, which activity is much more profitable, so as to allow the wetlands to regenerate. All the others must unconditionally leave the wetlands because nobody took them there, and many of these are recent, which means they are doing it in deliberate defiance of plans to save their country. The swamp of Busemba, between Kiroro and Karasa, was the river crossing where our machine gunner, Mondo to Highway, used to do a lot of damage to the UNLA. There was not a single encroacher at that time. It is now invaded, and so is Mayanja, Wenkarwe, Wabukokoma, etc. When I go to those areas, I really want to get out of the car and start fighting. These are areas I know very well. They must get out. Those swamps had nobody who was in those swamps. When I flew to Kyoko recently, I saw the swamps that feed into Mayanja, Makerere, Kizikibi, etc. being encroached on. This is my last warning to the local authorities all over Uganda. Damage to our local water bodies affects 40% of our rainfall. How can we tolerate that? This is a danger to our very own existence. The global mistake makers are endangering the globe and humanity with the greenhouse gases. Humanity will struggle against them. Why should we reinforce their mistakes with ours? Another danger to our rapid socio-economic transformation is the corruption of political actors and public servants who do not only steal government money, thereby denying the population the services that money would have provided, but they also parasite on our business people. Business people and investors do not feel beholden to these parasites, expose both their requests for bribes and their schemes for frustrating those that do not pay bribes. Action will be taken for the benefit of the business atmosphere in the country. Finally, on strategic issues, I must point out the mistake of...
Honorable members, we have transport that is arranged for you at the same drop-off point you had today. We kindly ask that in an orderly manner, after His Excellency has left, in an orderly manner, we shall ask that you proceed to that gate where transport shall be waiting to take you back to Parliament. Once again, we thank you for your attendance and for your participation today. Have a lovely evening and good night.